By accident, the millionaire opened his maid's room, and what he saw left him in shock. It was one of those mornings when the sun rose over New York with golden defiance, painting glass towers in liquid fire. Inside the 34th floor of a luxury penthouse, everything gleamed: marble floors, chrome appliances, art that cost more than most people's homes. And yet, the man who owned it all sat at his grand dining table, staring blankly into his untouched cup of coffee. Michael Anderson, 48 years old, self-made billionaire, tech genius, and CEO of one of America's largest corporations, but these days, even his success felt heavy. His father used to tell him, "Son, never let your heart get soft. The world eats the soft." So Michael hardened his heart. He didn't believe in luck, kindness, or mercy. He believed in numbers, logic, and results. His employees feared him. His friends were business partners. His home, a palace of silence. Only one sound occasionally broke that silence: the faint humming of Maria, his maid. The maid who never complained. Maria was in her mid-40s. She came from Mexico 20 years ago with dreams that had long been replaced by survival. Every morning, she arrived before dawn, cleaning, cooking, arranging flowers, and vanishing quietly before Michael returned from work. He never really noticed her, except when something wasn't done perfectly. She didn't complain, even when he yelled at her for dust on a shelf or for the towels being too wrinkled. To her, this job meant her son's education, her mother's medicine, and one more month of rent. She smiled through exhaustion. Michael never saw it. A stormy evening. One Friday evening, New York was drowning in rain. Michael had just returned from a tense board meeting. He stormed into the apartment, loosened his tie, and poured himself a drink. As he walked toward his study, his phone rang. It was his lawyer. "Michael, there's been a major issue with the software licensing in our California branch." Michael sighed, pacing, barely noticing that the hallway lights flickered from the thunder outside. He turned the wrong corner and reached for a door he never usually opened. The maid's room. The door that wasn't meant to open. He didn't mean to. He thought it was his storage room. But when he pushed the door open, he froze. The room was tiny, barely large enough for a bed, a table, and a small shelf. The walls were plain, yet on them hung something that pierced straight through his cold exterior: pictures. Dozens of them. Old, wrinkled photos taped lovingly on the wall: a young boy with bright eyes holding a school medal, Maria standing in a hospital hallway, a group of women in uniforms smiling under a "Community Center Volunteers" sign. And at the center, a photo of Michael's late wife, Claire. He blinked, confused. His wife had died 5 years ago in a car accident. How did Maria have her photo? He stepped closer and noticed something else: a small wooden box on the table, open, filled with letters. Each letter had his company logo on it. He picked one up. The letters. "Dear Mrs. Anderson. Your late wife's donation has helped our foundation continue supporting the cancer ward for children. Thank you for your kindness and continued sponsorship." He realized, Maria had been continuing Claire's charity donations, using part of her small salary to keep his wife's legacy alive. There were receipts, notes, and little thank you drawings from children who had been helped by those donations. Michael's throat tightened. He sat on the edge of her bed, feeling the sting of tears he hadn't shed in years. This woman barely earns enough to live, and she still gives away what little she has, for a cause that meant everything to Claire. He felt ashamed. The hidden journal. As he looked around, he found a small notebook under the pillow, written in careful, neat handwriting. He hesitated but opened it. "I still remember the day Mrs. Anderson smiled at me for the first time. She said, 'Maria, kindness is the only investment that never fails.' After she passed away, I promised to keep that kindness alive, even if no one noticed. Mr. Anderson doesn't see people anymore. He sees employees, numbers, schedules. But I believe he still has a heart, he's just forgotten where he left it. Michael couldn't breathe for a moment. He read those words again, he's just forgotten where he left it. It felt like someone had pulled a mirror to his soul. The next morning, Maria arrived quietly as always. When she entered the kitchen, she noticed something strange. Michael was already there, making coffee. She froze, startled. "Sir. You're up early." Michael turned, offering a small, almost awkward smile. "I thought I'd make coffee for a change," he said, handing her a cup. She looked confused. "For me?" He nodded. "Yes. For you." She hesitated before taking it, her hands trembling slightly. There was a long silence before Michael spoke again. "I opened your room yesterday. By accident." Maria's eyes widened, panic flashing across her face. "Sir, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. I'll remove the pictures if they bother you." Michael shook his head. "No, Maria. Don't. Please." His voice softened. "I didn't realize how much you've been doing. The donations. The foundation. Claire would have been so proud." Tears welled in Maria's eyes. "Your wife, she helped me when I was nothing. She gave me a job when I couldn't even speak English. I wanted to keep her kindness alive. That's all." Michael swallowed hard. "You did more than that. You reminded me what kindness looks like. The transformation." From that day forward, something changed in Michael. He began noticing people again, the security guard who worked double shifts, the janitor who greeted everyone, the young intern who stayed late just to prove himself. He started visiting the children's hospital that Claire had once supported. He met the same children whose lives Maria's quiet sacrifices had helped sustain. For the first time in years, he smiled, genuinely. But he wasn't done. The gift. A month later, Maria came to work and found a letter on the kitchen counter with her name on it. It was written on gold-embossed paper, official company stationery. "Dear Maria. Effective immediately, you are no longer employed as a housemaid. You are now the Director of Community Relations for the Claire Anderson Foundation. Your responsibility will be to oversee the charity's expansion and ensure that kindness continues to reach those who need it most. Your salary has been increased accordingly, and your son's full college tuition will be covered by the foundation. With deepest gratitude. Michael Anderson." Asterisk. Maria's hands trembled. Her heart raced. She could hardly breathe. When Michael entered the room, she burst into tears. "Sir, I can't accept this. I don't even know how to." Michael interrupted softly. "You already know how, Maria. You've been doing it your whole life. The foundation's revival." Months passed, and under Maria's guidance, the Claire Anderson Foundation bloomed again. She brought warmth and humanity back to what had become just a corporate name. Michael attended events not as a CEO, but as a man rediscovering his heart. He watched Maria talk to volunteers, comfort patients, hug children, and he realized something profound. Sometimes the richest hearts live in the humblest rooms. A year later. One crisp autumn morning, Maria stood on stage at a charity gala, now dressed elegantly, her eyes glimmering with humility and pride. Behind her was a large photo of Claire Anderson smiling beside a quote. "Kindness is the only investment that never fails." She spoke softly into the microphone. "There was a time I thought my life didn't matter. That people like me could never make a difference. But then someone believed in me, because I once believed in kindness." The audience rose in applause. Among them stood Michael, tears in his eyes, his heart full. He realized that night that wealth wasn't measured by bank accounts or properties, but by the lives we touch. The final moment. Later that evening, as the crowd dispersed, Maria approached Michael quietly. "Sir," she said, smiling warmly, you gave me a new life. He shook his head. No, Maria. You gave me mine back. They stood in silence, looking at the foundation banner fluttering in the wind. Two people, one rich, one poor, bound forever by the invisible thread of compassion. Epilogue. Years later, the Claire Anderson Foundation became one of the largest child support charities in the United States. It opened schools, hospitals, and community centers across the country. Every building had a plaque that read, "Inspired by a maid's heart, built by a man who remembered his." And sometimes, when Michael visited one of those centers, he'd pause to watch a group of children playing, laughing freely, and he'd whisper quietly to himself, "Claire, your kindness didn't die. It just found a new home." And somewhere in heaven, Claire smiled. Moral of the story. No act of kindness is ever too small. Sometimes the person you overlook, the one cleaning your floors, serving your meals, or standing quietly in the background, carries more grace, courage, and goodness than all the wealth in the world. And sometimes, all it takes to change a life, or rediscover your own, is one accidental open door.